Okay, short video on absolute advantage. This is Unit 1. This has to do with production possibilities, where a country can produce either A or product B. And now we're going to look at absolute advantage in comparison to other countries. So you should have the definition of absolute advantage. I'm going to type it out underneath in the YouTube video. But what is absolute advantage? It means my country, the United States, makes more apples, produces more apples than, say, Mexico, because we produce more of that good. Therefore, we have the absolute advantage. It doesn't matter if we're talking about a big country or a small country. Whoever produces more of a product, we say is producing more efficiently, right? We're better at producing something. So whoever produces more has the absolute advantage. So take a look. We have Jack and Jill. This is an economy of Jack and Jill. Jack's got his economy, Jill's got her economy. They both produce both bagels and rolls. So, based on what I just told you, who produces more products? Pretty simple. So, looks like Jack produces 15 bagels, Jill produces 30. So, Jill has the absolute advantage in bagels. Who has it for rolls? Looks like Jill again. She happens to have the absolute advantage. She produces 45, Jack only produces 15. What about Jack and Jill also, let's say, produce butter and cream cheese? Who has the absolute advantage in butter? Looks like Jack does. He produces 200, Jill only produces 50. What about cream cheese? It looks like Jill does, right? She produces 300, he produces only 50. Easy, right? Now it gets a little trickier. So absolute advantage, if you want to write this down, whoever makes more products, right? And that's what this was. The total number of bagels and rolls, butter or cream cheese, per day. So per day, per hour, per week, per year. The second part, though, is a little trickier. Or uses less inputs per each product. So we haven't talked about inputs or outputs yet. Whoever uses less inputs or outputs. Think about what an output is and what an input is. It's pretty simple. An output is what you get after making something, and the inputs are what you put into making a product in economics. Inputs could be a number of things. Outputs are all the same. The output is the finished product, nice and easy. But the inputs could be the number of workers that you use to make a product, the amount of time it takes to produce one product, the amount of acres to produce a bushel of wheat, the amount of factories to produce a certain number of cars, something like that. That's an input as opposed to an output. So inputs are generally things like capital, things that you put into producing something. All right, take a look at the second example. Totally different example now. Move it up so you can see. We've got who has the absolute advantage here. So generally you're going to see, unlike the board, sometimes you see graphs like that, you're going to see charts like that. You got GM and Ford, the car producers, United States car producers. And over here, it's saying who has the absolute advantage in trucks and who has it in cars. What do you think? Who has the absolute advantage? Now, most of you might say, that's pretty easy, right? Easy, whoever's got the larger number. Well, if you look a little closely, we're actually working with the second part of the definition. Look up here. This says number of workers per truck. How many trucks? One truck. The number of workers to produce one truck. The number of workers to produce one car. So who produces more? Think about it this way. Who produces more in a day? Whoever uses the smallest number of inputs. So you as a student must identify immediately when you see a question like this based on absolute advantage, who are we working with, an input question or are we working with an output question? The previous one, Jack and Jill, total number per day. If you can see that, the total number of bagels or rolls per day, the total number of outputs. Here, this is the total number of inputs, total number of workers per one unit. So it takes GM 6 workers to make one truck, Ford 8 workers. Who's more efficient? Who produces more in a day? GM, the smaller number. So in this case, GM has the advantage in trucks, the absolute advantage. What about cars? Looks like, so GM up here, looks like Ford has the smaller number. They use less workers per one car, and Ford is going to have the absolute advantage here. All right? Okay, so hope that makes sense. This will help. You should definitely write this stuff down. Hope you can read it all. Closer. In an output question, we'll start here with outputs. Outputs, whomever produces more total products per hour, per day, per month, per year, they have the absolute advantage. So for example, 50 cars per day, 100 bushels of wheat per hour, 10 apples picked per minute. Okay, that person, that's an output question. An input question, whoever uses less inputs to make one good, just like the last example. So a couple of examples. How many minutes it takes to produce one pizza? How many workers it takes to produce one pizza? How many acres of land to make one bushel of wheat? And we can go on and on with different types of, how many barrels of oil it takes to, sail across the Atlantic Ocean compared to another country. How many, their ships maybe run less or more efficiently. They need more oil or less oil. Total, that way the inputs, generally with inputs, you're looking for the smaller number. Outputs, you're looking for the larger number to find what? The absolute advantage. All right, let's see if you can figure this two out. These two questions. All right, hope that's clear. All right, I'll read it to you in case you can't read the. How's that? A little better? So we got the U.S. and China, one example here. Who has the absolute advantage in bikes and who has the absolute advantage in skates? Same thing here, Japan and Canada. Who has the absolute advantage in bikes? Who has the absolute advantage in skates? Up here it says hours to produce one bike, hours to produce one roller skate. Over here for Japan it says bicycles per day, skates per day. All right, pause the video. The key to this question, first thing you do, you want to find the absolute advantage, you got to figure out if it's an input or an output. So, up here, hours to produce one bike. Are we talking about hours to produce one bike, inputs or outputs? Well, time generally has an input, right? The number of total time it takes to produce a good. So this is an input question. So we're looking for the smaller number. The smaller number to produce one of the bikes or one of the roller skates means that they're more efficient. They produce more every day, every year, every hour, etc. So who has the absolute advantage in bikes? It takes 0.5 of an hour, half an hour for the United States. It takes a whole hour for China to produce a bike. So the United States has the absolute advantage in bikes, so USA. What about for skates? Well, it takes 0.2, so 20 minutes to produce roller skates for the US, and only 10 minutes, 0.1 for China. So China has the absolute advantage here. Now for the bottom one, it's different. We're still using a unit of time, right? This one was talking about hours to produce a bike. Here it's bikes per day. Sometimes students get confused and they say, but you're using time a day. Yeah, the total number of the bikes in a certain amount of time. That's not saying the total time it takes to produce one. So the input question is always going to have how long it takes, how many workers it takes to produce one. The output question is asking the total amount in a certain amount of time. So it's easy. You're looking for the larger number. Who's going to produce, who has the absolute advantage in bikes? Looks like Japan, they produce 5. China, Canada produces 1. And who has the absolute advantage in skates? It looks like 2 beats 1. Japan, again, has the absolute advantage. All right. Hope that part makes sense, and have a good one.